I grew up in a part of the city that was thriving in poverty, but lacking opportunity for, in particular, men like myself. They didn't experience fair play. They just experienced the need to survive. I was just obsessed with how can I meet people ground level? How can I meet young people ground level? How can I immerse myself in the culture? Start to realize this is very, very powerful tool. This changes people's lives. Like I've had one fight or two fights in my class for 14 years. Let me be honest with you right now. If it reaches that point, it's too late.
Mm.
And it's about
That was the amazing Sam McPherson, and we're going to hear more about Sam and his dream and his story on the Someday Arrival podcast. So, welcome again to the Someday Arrival podcast. Whether you're starting out as a leader or you're an experienced and seasoned exec, we're here to help you to change lives, to make a difference, and reach your dream destination. I'm Darren Richards, and I'm joined as ever by Jyoti Patel, who today is in active freefall, skydiving over Table Mountain, where she has painted a bullseye on the top. And how is it going up there? We're going to have to hear you with the wind whistling.
Darren, I think you're really confusing our audience. I'm literally still in Jersey City in my
Still in
apartment.
Jersey City.
Still
So
in Jersey
dull.
City.
Only in New York. It's so dull, isn't it?
Honestly.
And Jyoti, what can you tell us about our guest today?
Well, I can say, first of all, welcome, Sam McPherson. Lovely to have you on our series.
yeah, it's love to be here.
It is, I know. And Sam, you and I bonded, and Darren actually, because we're all from Birmingham, which is a fabulous
Yeah,
place. And
yeah,
you know that it has many, many great things, but it's a bit like Marmite, isn't it? People either love Birmingham or they don't. There's no in between.
They either love it or they're wrong.
That's right. But Sam, you grew up in a part of Birmingham that has high rates of poverty and deprivation. But with that, you decided to do something about it, which I love, and I'll come on to that in just a moment. But also, you're a man of many talents. You are a self-taught musician. You have 15 years experience as a recording artist, as a performer. You're also a sportsman, and you have a background in education workshop facilitation for hard to reach youth. You have, in fact, you're the only person I think that has more job titles than I've had. So nice to meet a kindred spirit. But going back to Birmingham, what I love is that you noticed there was a lack of opportunities for young men. And so you decided to do something about it. You
hmm
set up Maverick Sounds, is that right? To harness music, to equip young people in prisons and the community with skills that could really just boost their confidence and make life better, to help them make smarter choices and really help them elevate their aspirations and society position. Is that right?
yeah. That's the one. Yeah.
That's the one. It's a big one. And Sam, you know, it sounds like much of your work has seen you work with young people and adults, not just in prisons, but in schools and pupil referral units and youth offending teams all around the UK. I understand that your ultimate goal is to encourage as many young learners as possible to learn positive expression and to be able to role model that in the way that young people can relate to. Is that an accurate reflection?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much for making the time to speak to us and really to share your journey with our audience, because this is all about someday dreams and the destination, but more importantly, the way that you get there. So let's talk about your someday dream. Paint us a picture, if you will, just so we can step into your world and see the vision from where you started.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned part of it before. I grew up in Birmingham, in a part of the city, in a city that was thriving in poverty, but lacking opportunity for, in particular, men like myself. Without giving it much thought, my journey sort of started off as underline of kind of underachieving in school, but still making it through. I went into university and I managed to get a degree in sports studies, literally just scraped through, but I managed to get a 2-2. And then my journey sort of started in delivering PE lessons under agency. But prior to that, I used to do workshops under charities and prisons. And it all started through my church, actually. I had a church that I was going to, attending frequently. They noticed sort of my gifts in terms of I could dance, I could rap, I could sing, I could do. And it was one of these things where it was weird because it was like there's the corporate world and then there's the creative world.
Hello,
Yeah.
corporate creativity, JT.
There we go. I know.
Yeah,
That's one of
absolutely.
JT's little. I think you've stolen her phrase. You can fight over it later.
Yeah, yeah. No, but definitely like It all started with a quote from Albert Einstein, and the quote was, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will go through its whole life believing it's stupid." That's when I started to sort of see kind of a flaw in the education system. One of the main strands contributing to kids falling within the system was lack of achievement, lack of a sense of achievement, along with role models, lack of constructive use of leisure time, and then broken homes. So gang violence and sort of all of these sort of stuff, like it was like a cycle in the area that I was in. And these strands were sort of forming what I like to call like a survival mode, where we had young people in that area that they didn't experience fair play. They just experienced the need to survive. So their moral code was with their perception of the world was very different. But I just felt like I had the tools to give back. And it was through music. It started off as drama, actually, but then I just thought music was a very powerful tool. We're dealing with a lot of corporate exploitation at the moment. There's a lot of young people that are influenced and indoctrinated by a lot of like violent types of music, in particular in my community. But there is also a lot of positive music out there, a lot of inspirational music, but they just don't get the quality of coverage. So I was just really passionate about that and how it can be used as a tool. I've always said there's two accountabilities. One, higher powers, government, what can they do to support more? And then the accountability of us in a community, what can we do? How can we meet our young people ground level? And I just sort of took the second approach. Sort of in a nutshell, going back to me being a teacher and working in a school in a very formal environment, I found it very difficult because it was, again, there was kids that were falling through the system that we couldn't engage them because they just became more of a table and a figure. And I take my hats off to teachers in a formal environment, because I feel like a lot of people have a lot of negative things to say, but the pressures to produce results is just becoming ever more demanding. So I feel like that's why I sort of kind of came away from that word, and then that's where the word non-formal education sort of come from for me. There's also academics like rest in peace Ken Robinson, who he would talk about alternative education that gets kids back into mainstream education. So that's sort of where the passion come from there, really.
That's so much I'd love to tap into there, but we won't have time. So, but a couple of things that stood out for me is the teaching hat. With the best intentions and the best will in the world, the role of teaching has actually changed so much as well, because you're not just showing, teaching education, you're teaching life education.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without the resources in many situations, your social worker, your parent, your teacher, your friend, your therapist, you're pretty much a few things in one. So it is very sad that there are a lot of kids falling through the cracks. Walk us through how you had that vision of what you wanted to do and how you made it into reality, because they are very different worlds, and somehow you found a way to integrate all those different threads and do something fantastic with it. So help us understand what that was like for you.
I'll be honest with you, it was largely to do with who you know. I was very fortunate that I had a lot of leaders and people that I looked up to that saw something in me. They saw potential in me when I didn't see potential in myself. A lot of it stemmed from church. It stemmed from my faith as a young boy. It stemmed from a brotherhood. And it stemmed from me having the right role models. So in saying that, there was a point where I never would have thought I'm able to monetize music. The type of music I saw being monetized was you just need fancy cars and girls in the back of your video. I didn't think it was something that could transfer to the corporate world. I didn't think it could have the impact that it does. Every time, someone was interested in our music workshops or someone was selling what we do, it was always like, oh, we do music. We do music as a part of, we do this as well. It's like this little extra add-on that you can have. start to realize this is very, very powerful tool. This changes people's lives. This gives people the ability to access therapy. This is people's therapy. This is a form of reflection. So in terms of specifically speaking in prisons, as you can imagine, the lads that are in prison, they don't have no form of reflection. They don't have a calendar or something to look forward to. But in terms of music, if the lads make a song in prison, they can see exactly where their mind was at that moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 or 4 years down the line, that's something that's tangible and they can keep forever, but they will listen to that and be like, oh, I was really in a different place like 5-10 years ago. So it's like it can just be used for so many things, bringing cultures together, universal language. Like that's sort of how it sort of meshed together. And I was lucky to be able to combine the skills and everything that I learned from university with lesson plans and of that nature. I just sort of said, okay, with music, rather than just saying there's a booth, go and write your song and write lyrics and getting a lot of kids just regurgitating what they've seen and what they've grown up around, you can take them on a journey.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, we're very lucky to have you, is what I can say, because to be seen though, and to be heard, especially in that kind of environment, must be crucial to whether someone rehabilitates or doesn't. And giving them every opportunity to really get their life on track in a very unique, culturally appropriate way, in a way that, like you say, is a reference to where they were at, whenever that song was written. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to see Sam in that environment, in custody, behind the walls of a prison, with some very tricky customers, some very scary guys, both in terms of like physically quite imposing, but also just, these are kids who have absolutely disengaged, who have dropped, and adults who have dropped out of the school system, dropped out of even the workplace, and don't fit anywhere. And Sam has this gift of being able to get them up and doing silly exercises and throwing balls around and putting on voices, but then using the lyric writing to express themselves. And it's like a form of journaling or therapy, and they'll get it out. Immense pain sometimes, bereavements, or people they've seen lost on the streets. And like, I mean, Sam, it must be a real privilege sometimes being the person who they open up to for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oftentimes emotional, like it's just understanding that, a lot of people just look at the product and not the process, really. In short, when you start to hear their stories, you start to understand why they're in survival mode. I started to, you know what's crazy? So I started to reflect on things that happened, situations that happened to me when I was younger as well. So, for example, like when I was around 14, I was walking home from school and I was rushed. I was rushed by 2 kids that were a lot older than me at the time.
Rushed? And you mean someone's hit you, pushed you, beat you up?
Yeah. And it was brutal. It was just like, you could say it was like just a type of bullying. It was like, I was a good kid. I never really, mom and dad always was like, yeah, make sure you're home. And I just remember these 2 kids that were, well, I say kids, I was in year 9, so I was 14. And these kids, I believe, were like 19 and 18. Yeah, I was walking from school and like they beat me up till like there was nothing left. It's just crazy because you're talking about a kid who was just in and out of church. I was scared. I was thinking, what if they don't stop next time? Then I started to reflect on my life that when I'm older now, what were those young kids doing? Why were they not in school? Who was their role models? What was their home like? It was like I started to reflect in that way, and I was doing that from just like my early 20s, like just starting to reflect on why did they have a lack of constructive use of leisure time? Where was it a broken home? Where was their role models? Did they have any sense of achievement? Were they kicked out of school? That all of these questions, that contribute to, as I mentioned before, that survival mode, like no morals, no fair play. So then I started to show empathy, and that's where I feel like I started to become more effective. First, learning someone's story,
That brings me on to the next question, really. What are the disciplines and habits that you have that have kept you on the straight and narrow? What kind of, do you have a daily routine or daily habits? What disciplines are important to you?
I used to play basketball as well. Again, one of the stems was lack of constructive use of leisure time. Routine was important to me. Getting the basics was important to me. Keeping my body healthy was important. Not using any substances of misuse or those are like the first things. It's like holistically making sure I'm good. That was the first discipline, and then in everything I do, I try to work alongside people. So just I started to learn the art of interdependence, where it was, a lot of people strive to be independent in 2024. I've got my own house, I've got my own this, I've got my own that. And then you've got dependent people who obviously can't function without someone or depending on someone. But this concept of interdependence where it's in the middle, and it's like if I can work alongside someone to get an idea that I would have never imagined before, that taught me to be in every space in the UK, really. That took me a long way, that discipline, like being able to adapt in any culture, like being able to stand outside of my comfort zone and listen to people's ideas. And then it comes down to another art, which was the art of empathic listening, which is listening with the intent to understand rather than the intent to respond. Do you listen to people's stories? Do you understand? Do you have more of an understanding of why they are the way they are? Yeah, I would say if that's a long response, but those I keep those values close to me, basically.
Something that Darren's book talks about is leading with hope and being heard and being held or holding space for other people, forming that human connection, which is all about empathy. So you sound like you're doing all of that, which would bring me to ask you, of all the lessons that you've learned, it sounds like it's been one heck of a journey. What would be the most valuable lesson that you've taken away from that?
The lessons I've learned in terms of my business and running a business is try to make things easier on yourself in the long term. One big thing for me is if you're a giver, make sure you have a limit because the takers have none.
That's good. That's good, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm telling you, you will burn out. I'm telling you, you will become a diluted version to yourself. For me personally, as a father, as a son, as an uncle, as a teacher, as a leader, I needed to take grasp of that. And then done is better than perfection. So there's loads of projects, loads of ideas that I thought would flourish, but just thought, it's not, I need it to be this type of way.
I'll come back to that another day and finish that one off. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's just do it. Just like these are just values that I just stick to, basically. They help me through. So yeah.
The one about giving as well is really important, because you're right. If you're a giver and if all you're getting is take, you're going to run on empty at some point, and then you're no good to anyone. So
yeah.
What about tricky times? And I know working in the environments that you work in, there's probably a fair few of those, but can you walk us through a very tricky time that you've experienced where you've had to really had your leadership skills tested?
A couple, actually. For me, not realizing how lonely this road can be. You just work and work, and there was a point where my mental health deteriorated. I'm currently grieving at the moment. So loss of my mum, which was last year. So you don't really realize the impact of not doing the steps to keep yourself healthy and your mind stable until something hits you of that nature.
What do you do? What's your way to unwind and switch off?
I think gym is one. You have to first work on the physical to make your mind feel better. You can't just sit there and just think yourself in a better place. You need to take steps. There's steps in, like, physical activity, going to the gym. I think of it as, when is the only time you're just not thinking about work? So that, and probably holidays.
Holidays.
Yeah, family time, those sort of things.
having kids, I can imagine, is a great way to take you out of that headspace though as well at times, because you don't have the capacity to think about yourself in those moments. You're so
Yeah.
busy.
So Sam, your day job, or one of your day jobs, is to go into a prison, sit in front of one of these high-ranking managers and say, give me some money and I'm going to come in, I'm going to meet a whole room of strangers, prisoners, offenders, and by the end of that session, or that 6 weeks or 8 weeks, they will have written their own track, maybe recorded it, maybe even done a music video. They'll be more confident. They will have expressed themselves creatively, expressed their needs and their hurts, and they will be in a better place. They'll be that much more rehabilitated. Okay, how the heck do you do that when you walk into a room and you've got guys who are trying to kick off, trying to show they're the big man, trying to, like, you know, maybe they've brought angst into the room, or maybe they're in the room because they want to start a fight with someone. Like, how on earth do you control? What have you learned about controlling the room? Control is the wrong word, but how do you manage unmanageable people? I'd love to know that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. A lot in our society today, their approach is a preventative approach. Let's for example, harsher stop and search, more prison time, take their TVs away from them, like, and there's just got to be a balance, hasn't there? Like, for some of these kids, it goes back to what I was saying before. Survival mode, you need to understand that term, is, again, they don't understand.
This is about what they've been through, right? This is
about
they've been, sometimes they have witnessed, seen things, had things don't happen to them,
yeah,
which are even worse than what happened to you.
Yeah.
And then we see them after the abuse, or after the mental health issues, or after and you're getting the end product, right?
Yeah. So, like, I'll give you an example. Yeah, there's a young lad, and literally he had a fight on the wing. He was obviously in a little bit of trouble, and the first threat that, like, sort of the prison, the whole thought process that they had was, we're going to take your TV off you. And his response was, take my effing TV. I lived under a bridge for 6 months. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you can't take anything more away from me. You can't make me feel any more lower than I already feel. So I feel like I just go into my environment with that in mind. How can I meet them ground level? How can I sort of try and seek out the need? As I've said, touch wood, but I've never, in the 14 years I've been doing this, I've never had anyone be violent towards me, or, you know, it's just about showing you care genuinely. And I will go as far as to say, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in certain positions that don't get to do that. So I'm very fortunate. Like, you got to understand, like, our officer's role is very different to mine. He's got to be the one that enforces, you know, I've got to be the one to tell you to go behind you, you know. I've got that very awkward relationship. But then there's officers that are veterans, and you do see they've got really good rapport with lads. But for me, managing that space, a key skill is you've got to be adaptable. You have to be, you know, you can't teach like a formal teacher teaches in a school. You've got to be able to understand that a lot of these guys have neurodiversity needs. Their perceptions of the world are very different. So I'm just very good at recognizing when something's getting heated.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this. So, like, people listening might be in a work environment, or a school environment, or a college, or entrepreneurial. Like, you must have learned some of the secrets to defusing, to seeing something early and diffusing. Is there anything transferable that you'll be like, well, look, the principle is this?
Let me be honest with you right now. If it reaches that point, it's too late. Right. Really. A lot of guys haven't got realistic responses to situations. So my approach is always to be calm. But the reason why I've had success rates with, you know, like, I've had one fight or two fights in my class for 14 years. As I said, music, it fully engages young people. It's embedded in the culture. Everything is more of a preventative approach now. So, for example, kids that do drill music and they use violent lyrics, you know, a lot of organizations and higher powers are just saying, let's just ban drill. It just won't work. It just doesn't work because it's a part of the culture. It's almost like saying that all the kids love Jordans and Nike, but we're going to ban you and you can only wear Reebok. It's embedded in the culture. So I'm a believer of taking what they like. So I guess another thing that I've done a lot of research in is what's hot. What do the kids love? What are they into? I do some research. Like, I'm gonna tell you guys now, if you still calling drill grime, you've got to leave.
Sorry, I make that mistake all the time. Whenever I'm talking about
Listen,
grime, I always make the mistake of calling.
if you say grime to the kids, yeah, I'm telling you, parents, if you're listening now, if you say to your kids, yeah, you're gonna do a bit of DJing and grime, your kids already be like, yeah, just leave
drill,
it, Dad. Leave it, Dad.
This is like, Jyoti, this comes back to some of the corporate stuff, like knowing your audience, right? You've got to know your audience.
Very much so. Yeah, Sam, that's something I talk a lot about, is knowing who your audience are. And what strikes me is that you really do meet your audience where they're at, as opposed to putting them into your world. You step into theirs. And I can imagine that is such a powerful way to start building a rapport, especially with a very complex audience. I take my hat off to you. And the fact that you've had very few fights break out in 14 years, that says a lot. That says a lot about who you are and how you approach this. So that actually brings me on to my next question, some of which I think I may already know from what you've said, but some of the character traits that you've mentioned, empathy, being able to really connect on a deep level, really listening, empathic listening, great qualities to bring into the work of leadership. Is there anything else that you can offer up as part of the leadership, what's the word, space, in terms of how you can really have as much impact as what you're having in the world that you're working in?
Yeah, I think a lot of my lessons come from a lot of books that I read and biblical context as well. So a lot of faith, whether you're a believer or not, or anything like that, for me, there's sort of lessons I could pull out. So one is when I was going to church when I was younger, my pastor once said to me, "You need to know when to be a lion and a lamb." And I sort of said, "What does that mean?" And he was sort of saying how he was referring to Jesus basically, and he was talking about he went into a temple and turned over tables when it needed to be done, but he also was okay with going on a cross, and yeah. So and I'm just talking about the lesson. I'm not trying to preach or anything like that, but I was just talking about a lot of lessons. But one lesson that stood out the most is I was sitting in church and the pastor, he was an African pastor, so he was passionate, fire. And he was like, when he's shouting, you're in, you know,
that's not, they're not cornrows. That was just the pastor, aren't they?
No. So he was sort of like, his message was so powerful. He said this, and if anybody is listening to this right now, honestly, it's changed my life in the way I work in the business world. Because these ideas as well is what you bring in and makes you different, doesn't it? Like, you're not like anybody else when you have ideas from the outside. But so he was basically saying that Jesus was going around saving people. And then there was these people called the Pharisees who were like, I know him. That's Joseph's son, the carpenter.
They're the prison officers for this story.
Yeah. Who does he think he is, going around healing people, doing all these works and all of this sort of stuff? But there was a woman who was a Gentile. So Gentile is on the outside, basically, who traveled the land just to touch his garment so she could be healed. My whole meaning by that is familiarity blinds you to people's greatness, in terms of you could have been working with a kid who gets himself into trouble over and over again, continuous cycle. And then it's sort of this thing where I know him. He's never going to change. I know him. He's got this and this and that wrong with him. And sort of saying, you know, I need to block myself from familiarity and see the good in people. That's how I was able to pull the potential out of them. That's how I was able to see them where they're at present. It's hard, you know, like, reoffending rates are high. And it's tough, you know, like, the guys are going back out in the community and they don't feel like they have the support. I just hope. I hope a lot. Hope carries me. It's also a form of torment as well, isn't it? Because
It's the hope that kills you, right?
yeah, you just keep hoping, and it doesn't matter how much you get let down. You just believe in people. You believe that things can change. So if I was talking to a pessimist, I'd probably just annoy them.
What comes across really clearly is that you're not talking about, positivity in the sense that, yay, it's not all happy clappy and tambourines.
Yeah,
It's very much measured optimism,
mm,
and it's based on some kind of substance and
yeah,
genuine intrinsic belief that there are good people in the world. You just got to kind of chip away and find the diamond in the rough kind of thing, right?
definitely.
All right. So, Sam, one of the things we talk about in our podcast is a quote from John C. Maxwell. There's no success without succession. So when you
Mm.
think about making a lasting impact and leaving a legacy as a leader, what do you envisage will be yours?
I'm passionate about a different perspective for the education system, um, for our young people. And obviously, I'm referring to a particular demographic, who's more the West Midlands. That's where I'm passionate about. But having a different perspective on an education system that also favors creativity as much as it favors logic, and how important it is. And then my legacy in terms of my team, in terms of what I want to leave behind, is take action first. Don't we want to be the guys on the front line actually doing something. We don't want to be keyboard warriors. We don't want to bark when things are not important. You know, I've always said that the motto, your actions speak so loudly that I can't hear what you say.
Right.
People need to see, they need to see role models, they need to see people on the front line. So if I could leave anything behind for, I just hope I've done that for my team. That's what I hope.
It sounds like you're on your way for sure.
Mm.
Mm.
You mentioned role models. I forgot to ask you earlier. Who was yours?
I had a few. I think my primary school teacher,
Mm.
shout out Mr. James.
Hi,
If
big
you're
up
listening, Mr.
Mr.
James, nice job.
Listening, Mr. James. My pastor, Pastor Johnny. Uh,
Passionate pastor, one you spoke
past
about earlier.
passion.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you know what, guys? I'll just be real with you. Um, those two men that I mentioned were white men, white older guys. As you can imagine, I came from an area that was thriving in poverty, as I said, lacking opportunity. Um, Young black boys like myself. What we tend to see was a lot of our black role models who were a lot older, who were a bit older than us. If they became doctors or lawyers or teachers, what would often happen is they move out of the area. So
Mm.
we couldn't see role models in black role models in front of us. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
It was like they felt distant.
Mm.
So we was almost like in this place where we're still in poverty and we're still around kids that are we're all in this survival mode that I keep talking about, this re-emerging theme where we don't have no sort of morals. There is we just experience the need to survive rather than fair play.
Mm.
And you know, a lot of what we saw was just the war between police presence,
Mm.
teachers not understanding us, not understanding our story, where we come from. We're just labeled as aggressive, but they couldn't understand why a young kid at 14 is carry like feels like he needs to carry a weapon. Like, why can't you just get an education and get a job? And so it was really frustrating. But you got to understand that these two men in particular, my pastor Johnny, he came from Liverpool, and he came from one of the most racist parts in Liverpool. Moved to Birmingham, in the inner city, where he must have had a culture shock of his life. But he moved there, and he was taking all types of kids off the street. It don't matter what you look like, and he just provided a safe space. As I said, it was just exactly one of the strands that I was talking about. A big thing for young kids right now is the lack of constructive use of leisure time and the acceptance. Pastor Johnny created this youth club where literally over 100 kids in the area would go there. And it literally just had the simple PS1s, PS2s, Wii's, like little basketball nets, back football that you could go to. And it was funny because we just used to go for the girls, but it literally turned into a
This is real talk. This is real talk.
Yeah, it is, because it turned into a place where he really built us up. He really invested in us. He knew all 100, all of the youth by name.
Wow.
Like literally, he remembered us by name. It was almost like I would come in all my black tracksuit and stuff like that, and he'd be like, "You right, Sam?" Like, it just took me by surprise. Like, it just felt like he cared. When one of us was in hospital, he would come visit, and I just never seen role models like that. And then from that, it's then went on to role models like, and there's a Christian artist called Lecrae. So I really look up to him, because for a lot of young guys like myself, they were listening to like Tupac, Biggie, and all these sort of artists, where I was listening to a Christian artist, a Christian rapper, and his influence was all about being vulnerable. He would talk about not just his faith, and and it was more like he was relatable. It didn't matter what race, or he showed me the power of vulnerability, basically. And that's why I probably knew how powerful music was, because I was taught. Where, like, instead of talking about what's happening, tell us where we need to go. So for me, that these guys were like the start of the journey, basically. Thank God my primary school teacher, he knew I was really creative. He knew I was really sporty, and he knew I was struggling, but he tried his best within the red tape to try and push me the best he could. And, so yeah, I would say those three were massive for me. Mr. James, if you're out there, I know you're in Australia somewhere.
You can send this to him, yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it to him. And then, as I said, Pastor Johnny and Lecrae, these are some big names for me. There's loads to mention. Melanie, Jamo, they got me my first job. Susan Baxter, Darren, you
shout out the Baxters.
I got to throw you in there.
Oh, thanks very much. Thank you.
These people all had faith in me, and it goes back to the very, very start of what we was talking about today. Is I just felt like I was lucky to have all these people that had faith in me. Like Darren gave me the opportunity to work in a prison when I wasn't even established yet, and he's like, "I believe you can do it. I believe you can do it." And I was like, I think I can." First one went well, and that was it. I just
having a cheerleader, sometimes that's all you need, just to give you that little nudge and encouragement in the right direction, and then that's it. And
yeah, definitely.
You said a couple of things that really stand out, and one is, thinking about the corporate world and being a creative person. You linked it to your education and Mr. James, but having someone recognize your creativity and to not stifle it, but to nurture it, that's a game changer in itself, because when creativity can't come out, that in itself will lead to so many other, misfunctions, or whatever you want to call it, dysfunctionalities, if you like. And then the other thing you spoke about was vulnerability. And I think for young men in particular, from most communities, but especially this community that you're talking about, having someone give them a roadmap on how to be vulnerable as a man, that's a whole different world, but a very valuable insight. And to have it come through the form of rap and music as well, I can imagine how powerful that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's creating that. How can I say it in a safe space? How can I say it in a way that I'm not going to get laughed at? How can I say it in a way that someone's not going to use my vulnerability as a weapon against me? So these are the sort of things that we're taught, like, especially in particular for young men, and why suicide rates are so high is, don't go there.
You just toughen up. Got to toughen up.
Yeah, just toughen up. Get on with it. It's
Well,
not.
also the lack of male role models as well in certain communities, and this is why, having a healthy roadmap of masculinity is really important, especially for that demographic where there is a lack of some father figures, for example, or whatever else it might be.
And I think it's like 7 out of 10 offenders don't have a dad at home. I think, if I remember rightly from my days in Reflex. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And you get some parts of the community in America, in the UK, that are kind of they're kind of wastelands, they're deserts. There are no good men around, basically, which is really sad. Now, obviously, there's reasons for that. There's substance misuse, and there's obviously generational. If you don't see a good role model, then you're not going to be one, and they've got nothing to draw on, no frame of reference. They're, I'm not blaming anyone, but as you say, just sticking around like your pastor did, like you are, being a positive role model, staying in the community, showing another way as possible, that is hugely powerful. Yeah. And that's even without speaking truth and life into people. Just being there is a huge thing.
Absolutely.
Very selfless as well, I have to say. It's very, very selfless.
Sam is frustratingly, annoyingly kind and selfless, and spends most of his time supporting and believing in others, which brings us to one of our final questions. We're coming into land here. So before you go, we're asking everybody, what piece of advice do you wish you'd known when you were starting out? And for you, I'd love to know if there are black young people in your community, black boys especially, who you see on the streets, who you can see are just drifting. They are drifting towards that life and towards those more negative role models. What would you want to say to them, and what kind of advice and wisdom would you like to impart to them?
I will say to them, I know it seems like everybody is going down this path that you think is the only way, but there are people out there, there's positive artists out there, they just don't get the coverage, the quality of coverage. Look for them. I would say get out of your comfort zone. Comfort zone will be the death of you. I would definitely say that.
And what about to that 14-year-old Sam that day after you got left in a bit of a state? What would you want to say to that your younger self now, just that will maybe help on the road ahead?
It's not your fault. That's what I would say to him. I would say, just because someone's on the road to crashing, they don't need to crash into you. And that's a big one, really. I didn't need to take the responsibility to, even though I felt hurt, scared, I needed to be able to just escape mentally, basically. My backstory is very real, but again, it doesn't shape who I am. I couldn't let it make me bitter.
Because what we're saying here is a lot of these young men, they think that defines them. They think that's their identity. This is who I am. These are the people that I relate to. But you've come out with a very different narrative, very different identity, a different story. You've challenged some of the things that were going to be kind of imposed on you. You've kind of challenged that identity and created your own identity. I do see that in you.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy because one of the programs that we're doing, so we do a lot of work in prisons. We also have an employability program on it out as well. Partnership with Suited for Success. Shout out to Suited for Success.
Yeah, so these just context. These are guys who provide a suit free of charge for someone who's got a job interview, and they can go and they can look the part, and it can help them along, right?
Yeah, definitely. So we do this program. It's 3 weeks. We do the music side. The guys make a music video. The guys make their own songs, all of that sort of stuff. We sort of teach them the basic skills, not just how to do a chorus and verse and bridge and all of that sort of stuff, but just the fact of the holistic approach, again, the reflective side, the therapeutic side. And then in the second week, they get this suit, and it's funny what you said. It's about reinventing yourself, reinventing your image instead of the image that people have made for you or told you that you are. So a lot of the kids have never owned a suit. They've never owned a pair of shoes. The only pair of suit I had was the one that was passed down by my older brother, and it was when the shoulders are out here, and you got the boot cut covering your whole shoe. Yeah, that was the only suit I had. I didn't have a nice suit where people look at me different, and
you feel different.
You feel different. Yeah, and who cares about what people think? I get that narrative as well, but at the same time, reinventing the image of who you are and the fact that I get to be my own person. I get to create my own destiny. I get to be what I want. It's I can fit into any space. that's just powerful. So I was just, yeah, I was just passionate. I just didn't want to be like anyone else from a young age. If I saw people doing something, I'd go the other way in terms of, I just wanted to be different, basically. I just think that, you know, so many kids neutralize their uniqueness. You know,
Yes.
they wait to they wait
Preach.
for 10 of them. They wait for 10 of their friends to be like, this is cool before they say it's cool.
Right. Wow.
Like, just be yourself, man.
What are you most excited about that's coming up for you? I don't know if it's this project that you just mentioned or if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about, just so we can find a way to support you and stay in touch with you. Tell us about something that's coming up.
For me, as I said, working in prisons for 14 years, it was off and on until around 2018 when I opened my business. Working in prisons has been absolutely phenomenal. But I was speaking to someone with far more experience than me who actually does what I do, or international scales. And she said to me, prison's the easy part. And it's like, no, no, it's not. But I didn't get what she meant, but I was like, I was defensive at first, but I think what she was saying is a lot of what we do in prison, we build young people up, or young adults. We build them up to fail. We sort of, you can get a job, use this time productively, and then they hit the world, and then it's just like it's just really difficult. So I think what I'm excited about is actually getting out of short-term intervention and actually seeing people through the gate. It's something I've never been able to master or get my hands on because I just overcapacity, never had any sort of process in place. We know our expertise. Ours is just, we know how to meet kids ground level. We are the ones that relate to them. We are the role models. But we, as I said, that interdependence, how can we work with people to make it work? And not just like this blase, oh, let's network. I'm talking about real life changes. Like, so when we invest with or we teamed up with Suited for Success, already their reputation preceded them, just the way they work alongside people, the way they make people feel. Currently, we're creating like if you like, a type of ecosystem where the participants of Maverick Sounds, they have to have gone through Maverick Sounds before they can do the program on the outside. So one of our team on the outside, they will deliver the program. So they'll go through a program through Maverick Sounds, and then they'll go through another 3-week program on release. We're working a remand jail at the moment, so a lot of the guys are kind of short sentences. But even then, it's a nightmare because we've got guys that are like, there's just not even enough space in prison.
Well, this is
They've run out of space. They have run out of space.
Everything is, we're in a hard place right now, but hard times create strong people. So the guys that come through Maverick Sounds, they then go into this program, they get a suit, they get job training. Let's see if we can really make some impact on the outside. So we're starting with West Midlands first. I'm just passionate about where we come from, our community, inner city areas. I think there was a study that came out that Ladywood in Birmingham had one of the highest unemployment rates in the whole country. So there's work to be done, and we just need a little bit more infrastructure, really. So this is the first time I've thought on that scale. All I've thought is, I'm really good at doing music workshops. I'm just going to work with these lads. I'm just going to get paid. I'm just going to feel good about my day. But if you can do more, you must, within reason.
Sounds like you're the man for the job, Sam. I mean, if anyone can have faith that you're definitely part of that team.
Yeah.
But what would be the best way for people to get in touch with you if they can help and support in any way what you're trying to do? What social media platforms are you on? Are you on LinkedIn?
Basically, our website is mavericksounds.co.uk. On Instagram, it's Maverick Sounds 01.
So,
01.
And someone got in there before you. There was another imposter. Maverick Sounds.
I know. So I had to put the 01. Everything else is just Maverick Sounds. LinkedIn, it's Maverick Sounds. And I think the way to support is just word of mouth. That's how we get probably 90% of our business, really, is word of mouth. People.
Also partnerships with potential employers, perhaps, and people that can help set up the business side of these young people's lives and get them on a practical.
And funders as well, funders.
Yeah, so we've had some members from the NHS approach us. We've had the Prince's Trust. We've worked in collaboration with, and
Well, I'm sure this is not the last we've heard from you, Sam. There'll be a follow-up podcast at some point to see where your journey is. But from me, thank you so much. It's been so insightful. I'm sure Darren will agree, although he knew half of your story before.
I did, yeah. Sam, you're such an inspiring guy, and it's really lovely to see your journey from kind of newbie trainee all the way through to kind of business owner and facilitator and negotiator in what can be quite tough environments. And then what it sounds like next in the evolution, in the journey, is going to be about this bigger ecosystem and how can we partner, how can we get credibility so that there's a proper road from prison through to employment, through to the support and mentoring. It sounds to me like there's more to do. So thank you for your time. We're so grateful. So to my friend Sam, Jyoti.
Yeah, honestly, what an interesting guy. So full of stories and important wisdom and very unique experiences, actually. He has so much to offer, and I think he's doing fantastic work with the projects that he's involved with. And he talked about his start in life as well. That clearly has had a huge impact on the journey that he's on and what he's doing in the world.
He's one of my favorites. Like he's stayed around, he's stuck around in a tough neighborhood, where he grew up, and he's continued. He's basically thought, I wish there was someone like me around when I was growing up, and I'm going to be that person. I'm not going to leave like everybody else, which is quite a profound thing to do, really.
That kind of work it's a real calling, and it's not about a paycheck. It's not about status. Right. It's about serving a community that is very much underrepresented.
Oh yeah, he could get a lot more money and a lot more kudos and the rest of it if he just go and took those skills that he's got. And he's an incredibly gifted musician and rapper and lyric writer and performer and dancer. It makes you sick. But he's a very, very talented guy, and he's using all of that and pouring all of that back into his community.
Yeah, it's a very sad reality for so many kids out there, and the fact that he is able to connect on a very deep level with a very complex audience and get results is really mind-blowing.
What you were saying about aspirations was really important as well. Some of these young people, they literally just don't have anything in their frame of reference that would ever suggest they could do anything other than pursue a particular lifestyle, which is not going to be very productive. So, well, goodness me, lots to think about, lots to chew over. As ever, the questions, the themes of leading yourself, leading others, leaving a legacy are taken from the book The Plain Parable. It's out as an audiobook wherever you get your audiobooks, and it's on Amazon as well if you want to read it old style. Other than that, all that's left to say is thank you so much for joining us once again. Do subscribe, do click follow, don't miss the next one, and share this with a friend, someone who'd be inspired by Sam's story. And otherwise, until next time, please do make someday today.